Ever since the PlayStation 1 launched all the way back in 1948, Sony's been pretty dominant in the video game industry. They've sold more consoles in every generation than all the competition combined, with the exception of the Wii outselling the PS3 by about 15 million units. But considering Sony was able to rebound as well as they did in that generation after making so many atrocious mistakes is a miracle that often gets overlooked. And given that the PS4 was able to return to the tradition of selling out the ass, you'd think that Sony learned to never repeat the same mistakes of the PS3 ever again. But even though this might be a little premature to say, it looks like they're starting to get cocky, and I think they're probably going to make the same mistakes all over again. What kind of cocky behavior Sony been showing? Well, sit back in your YouTube viewing chair, don't forget to bring your father inside on this cold winter night, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the 642nd wonder of the world Cameron, to tell you all about it. The first thing I've got to say is that while Sony has been getting more and more cocky as of late, the PS5's probably still going to sell out the ass and be extremely profitable in the 9th console generation. They've got way too many exclusives under their umbrella that gives them a lot of margin for error, which pretty much makes them idiot-proof. All I'm really trying to say in this video is that the PS5's not going to outsell the Switch and Xbox Scarlett combined. And I'll even do you one better and predict that it's probably not even going to be the best-selling console out of the three either. After all, the Nintendo Switch kinda got a 3-year head start, and as I'm sure you probably already know, it's been selling out the wazoo ever since. A lot of people in Wikipedia say that the Nintendo Switch is still a part of the 8th console generation, but I don't see how that argument could even be made. What really happened was when the Wii U botched things to the point of no return, Nintendo just cut their losses and decided to get a massive head start on the 9th console generation.
Dude, bail? I think bail. Bail, yep, bail.
It still couldn't really be looked at as Sony and Microsoft being crushed by Nintendo or anything like that, since a lot of the Switch's current success is just cleaning up the Wii U's failure. And besides, a head start for N-Dog in the current generation probably also means early abandonment for the 10th generation, which would give the PS5 and Xbox time to catch up to the Switch's lifetime sales. Some people think the Switch is doomed once the new consoles drop since they're going to be way more powerful, but the DS and 3DS did just fine against Sony and Microsoft's home consoles before. So even when the Switch starts getting fewer multiplats, I think it's going to be just fine for a few more years before Nintendo needs to upgrade. This is all thanks to portability, exclusives, not dividing games up between two platforms like they've always done in the past, and of course the inevitable Switch Pro. But as far as the 9th generation is concerned, Nintendo's not really the competition Sony ought to be thinking about. I'm not naive enough to think Sony and Nintendo aren't competition, but they do offer completely different experiences. For the most part, there's 3 kinds of console gamers out there. The people who only buy Nintendo, the people who don't care about Nintendo and choose between Sony and Microsoft, and then the people who like Nintendo and then choose between Sony and Microsoft. Nintendo and Sony do share a lot of the same games, but the majority of them aren't system sellers, and the Switch doesn't get enough AAA multiplats to the point where they're a reason why anyone would buy the hybrid console. The games might be portable, but they usually cost a little bit more and aren't quite as good, so it's kinda like a bonus whenever Nintendo does get any of these games. However, the quality of the multiplats on Microsoft consoles are usually pretty much equal to the Sony versions in terms of quality. So these are really the two companies we ought to be comparing since they're basically trying to sell the same experience. At this point in time, we know a lot more about the PS5 than we do the Xbox Scarlett. And I've gotta say, it's pretty impressive that Sony seemingly found a way to send a spokesperson to the mother of loading times to tell her that her little boy ain't coming home. She might be sad to never see loading times again, but I can tell you right now, nobody else is gonna miss him. I mean, he was kind of a dick, let's be honest. Then there's those leaked images of the dev kit that seem to be real according to 9 out of 10 industry insiders. Personally, I don't really have any problems with the V-shaped console and I think I could get used to it, but most people seem to hate it, which means a lot more than my individual opinion, and given how ballsy the design looks, it does remind me of the Boomerang controller. Most consoles and electronics in general are usually designed to look like they want less trouble than Jackie Chan by seamlessly blending into the living room. But the V-shaped PS5 and the Boomerang controller to the PS3 both reek of cockiness and scream, "Hey asshole, I know I look weird, but guess what? You're gonna buy me anyway, and I'm gonna make sure that everybody who visits your house knows that you couldn't do a damn thing to resist buying me." Again, I don't mind this design, but I could totally see how it would rub people the wrong way, and it definitely comes off as Sony thinking they can do no wrong. But who knows, maybe the Scarlett's gonna be in the shape of like a lightning bolt or a flame or something, although I do seriously doubt that. But as if the in-your-face console design wasn't similar enough to the Boomerang controller, Sony's also heavily rumored to have an in-your-face launch price just like the PS3 did. If I'm being honest, I'm perfectly fine with paying $500 for a next-gen console in 2020 as long as it's impressive, but it's definitely a pretty ballsy asking price. It's almost impossible to make hardware comparisons since Microsoft Microsoft hasn't shown any of their cards yet. But I actually think that's another negative working against Sony. Microsoft made a huge mistake when they revealed the Xbox One right before the PS4, because it gave Sony a chance to one-'em-up the very next day. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we still don't know much about it, because they're probably waiting to get a better idea of what Sony's doing and how people feel about it before they make any concrete moves. Not having load times is a huge plus, but both consoles will probably be about as powerful as the other, or at least the difference won't be big enough for the average person to notice or care. But even back when graphics made a bigger difference, the strongest console usually never won anyway. And I doubt that's going to change in the 9th generation, so what it's really going to come down to are exclusives and people's personal feelings towards the brands themselves. We all know Sony's got assloads of exclusives, which has always been Microsoft's weak point, but it would appear that Bill Gates has been watching my videos because they've been on a tear the past few years buying as many game studios as possible. I know they've been letting some of their exclusives go to the Switch, but as great as a game as Cuphead is, it's not big enough that it'll sell a console years after its initial release. If you haven't bought an Xbox One to play Cuphead by now, you've probably made your mind up a long time ago that it wasn't worth it. So Microsoft might as well make a few extra bucks on it by putting it on a console that's not even their primary competitor anyway. But the main reason for allowing games like Cuphead to go to the Nintendo Switch is a lot bigger than just wanting to make a few extra bucks, though. This might ruffle a few feathers, but I think Microsoft, or really Phil Spencer in particular, realizes the fact I mentioned earlier that Nintendo's fanbase is considerably unique. And a large percentage of that fanbase is always going to buy a Nintendo console and then choose between Microsoft and Sony for the multiplats. So what better way is there to win that fanbase over than by porting inconsequential exclusives over to the Switch, being outspoken about wanting crossplay, and of course by allowing Banjo and Kazooie to be in Smash Ultimate, which nobody ever thought would happen, but I told people all along that it always would. But as far as their next-gen exclusives go, they're kind of a wild card at this point. Nobody really has any idea what kinds of games Microsoft's new studios have been working on, or if they'll even be any good, so I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. But I'm sure all of these developers realize the responsibility of competing with Sony's exclusives, and they'll probably feel like they've got a lot to prove. So it's definitely gonna be pretty interesting to see what they come up with, because it really is make or break. Phil Spencer's certainly been busy kissing hands and shaking babies, and I can't speak for everybody on this, but I actually used to hate Microsoft for the longest time thanks to the Red Ring fiasco with the 360, buying Rare for no reason, and then the fact that they tried scamming us with DRM policies. So I'm pretty sure that qualifies me as part of the demographic Microsoft's trying to win over. And you know what? I can honestly say the plan's working for me thus far, so I'm sure a lot of other people probably feel the same way. I've always been a Nintendo guy who chooses between other consoles, but my choice has always been Sony ever since the PS1. But for the first time ever, I'm actually considering buying an Xbox for the multiplats in the next generation. I'll probably end up getting a PS5 as well at some point, cause I'm probably not gonna be able to resist the exclusives. But if things keep going the way they are, then I feel pretty strongly about buying all the multiplats for the Xbox. Not just because Phil Spencer seems like a swell guy, but because of the ultimate display of cockiness on Sony's part. And I'm talking about the fact that for some reason they decided to stifle third-party developers and censor games, which is already starting to bite them in the bunghole because Omega Labyrinth had over 3 times the sales on the Nintendo Switch than it did the PS4. It's mostly just sexual content Sony's been censoring, and if you watch my review of Senran Kagura Reflections, then you'd know that I'm definitely not a big fan of those kinds of games, regardless of what my Switch playtime suggests.
I'm not a pervert!
But the very principle of Sony censoring developers is something that really steams my clams, so if I could hurt them financially, I'm definitely gonna. And if that means buying the Xbox versions of multiplats like Resident Evil and Seinfeld, then so be it. Console makers even having the ability to change third-party games is crazy to me. I mean, companies that make Blu-ray players and VCRs can't prevent people from making naughty movies for them. So if the PS5 could play a spicy Blu-ray, then what difference does it make if one of its games shows a little butt cleavage? That's a different conversation for another video I already made, but I'm sure third parties feel the same way I do. Especially David Cage, since he can't frequently put his unrealistic creepy fantasies into games anymore. At the end of the day though, I definitely don't want the PS5 to fail by any means, since the reason Microsoft changed their tune in the first place is thanks to there being stiff competition. And I'm sure it's still going to be successful as all hell regardless of Sony getting a big head from the PS4. But I do think all these mistakes are going to catch up to them and create a golden opportunity for Microsoft to pick up some serious steam. And I certainly don't see any way in hell that the PS5 is going to outsell all of its competitors combined. That is, unless they're purposely leaking all the negative PS5 info to gauge the public's reaction. Who knows though, maybe Sony's only cocky because there's features we don't know about that are gonna blow us away. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see though. In the meantime, I've got my eye on them though. What do you guys and gals think about the fact that Sony's been acting up a bit lately though? Do you think they're getting cocky, or do you think I'm just blowing things out of proportion? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody. But while you're here, let me tell you 2 people who I'd definitely buy in the next generation if there were consoles are today's patrons of the day, Aaron, Ayala, and Richard. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes in the mail and other wacky rewards. And if you want to make a cameo, then send pictures or videos of you rocking any FU Game Crew merch like these legendary human beings you see before you. As always, like and share this video anywhere on the internet to help this channel grow. And if you want to prove that you're not down with registered sex offenders, then go ahead and press the subscribe button if you haven't already. My name's Cameron, all one word, and I'll be back with more videos soon.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.